Hi, it's John here. This morning what we're going to do is we're going to just have a look at how to transfer a drawing from a photograph and enlarge it into a larger drawing. We're going to use a grid, and we're going to draw a grid on the photograph basically by measuring, in this case, 1 centimetre intervals to match the detail of the photograph that we've got. And I'm just particularly thinking about the area around the eyes. We don't want to make it too small, we don't want to make them too big, but depending on the size of your photograph, make that if it is a tiny photograph, then make the measurements maybe half a centimetre, or if it's a large photograph, make them 2 centimetres or even 3. That really does just depend on the size of your image. And we're going to look at the size of the paper that you're going to, or the canvas that you're going to transfer it onto, and make the squares larger accordingly. So mark down the sides of your photograph accurately and carefully. Make the grid by joining up the lines between the dots. And we can do the drawing of that grid onto a piece of clear plastic sheet, a piece of acetate, and that would mean that you don't have to just wreck your photograph every time you do it. So you can buy those as well. Make sure your pencil is nice and sharp, and we'll get on with the drawing of the grid when this pencil is nice and sharp. Look at that. I use a 2B pencil. It could be an H pencil or an HB, doesn't matter really. You don't want to have a really soft pencil because you want to get rid of the lines. Now, measure the long edge of your photograph and measure the long edge of your paper, and work out how many of the how large the image you want to be is. In this case, I'm going to make it 1.5 times the size of my photograph. If it's twice the size, then I'll be making 2 centimetre squares. In this case, because it's 1.5 centimetres, I'll be making 1.5 centimetres squares. And make sure that fits on your canvas. You can do it down the edge. I'm doing it here inside the edge of the paper. But so I'll be using a set square just to make sure that my lines are parallel and that they're at right angles to each other. So this is measuring out 1.5 centimetre squares along the short edge, and then I'll do it along the long edge as well. And just make sure that that you put your pencil on the mark, and then move your ruler or your set square up to the mark, and then you can lightly draw in these lines that are going on your paper. They will be rubbed out, erased eventually, so you do need to make sure that you're not pressing on hard with your pencil, and you do need just to check that your paper is that you're going to fit it on the paper. That's quite a bit of a crucial thing, so I do a little bit of maths to work that out to start with. So mark more on all edges, and then use your ruler to draw in the parallel lines that are going to go across. I here I'm doing every other one, and that just makes sure that I'm lining things up correctly. It just is just what I'm doing there, and I'll do the same across the top, and every 1.5 centimetres. Sometimes I just look for just to save a little bit of time, we'll just make the smaller squares in the centre, or in where the smaller detail of the drawing is going to be. For instance, around the eyes, I'm going to make sure that I've drawn all those in, but I might leave some of the outer edges because you don't need all of the squares there. And so you can see that central part has got all the squares in, and now I'm just going to find where I'm going to start. And I'm going to start with the bottom left part of the chin, and that's 4 or 5 squares in, and it's 3 squares up. So I'll count it across, and so now I'm just going to see where the chin starts, on which part of the square the that little shape starts. And there's a sort of an inside and an outside shape. I don't quite get it right here. It's a little bit more L-shaped. But there's an inside and an outside shape, and I call the outside shape the negative shape, and where the chin is, that's the positive shape. When you're transferring the edges, the points on the edges, just say, well, it's halfway up the left-hand line, and it's 2/3 of the way up the right-hand line, and that will get you to be able to draw get the starting points right. So for instance, across this corner here, it's about 1/8 of the way in on the photograph, so I draw 1/8 of the way in on the larger square. And just keep an eye on the angles as well. That'll help you to get the shape more accurate. And we'll see how it turns. I can see the positive shapes turning in. It's sort of like a circular shape, but the outside is more crescent shaped. And so you keep checking between the positive and the negative, and that helps. If it averages out, and as you keep checking it and keep readjusting it, it will make a much more accurate shape. We do that in life drawing or any sort of drawing. We're looking past the positive, the solid object, to the background and seeing what the shape of that is as well. And we're just looking at really obvious edges. So for instance, obviously the side of the face, the bridge of the nose are obvious edges, the crease of the mouth and the eyelids are all obvious edges. They're where the skin folds and disappears. And we can't see the adjoining skin, the edges of the hairline and so on. And that helps us to mark in where these particular features are. And when it comes to the inside of the face, we're still looking for positive and negative shapes, although that might be you just decide which is the positive shape. So you can see a inside and an outside shape and marry the two together as you're doing it. Don't just stick to one, that line is exactly right. You just need to keep checking. And using the squares, the grid helps you do that. You can see that, for instance, above the eyelid, we can see above the eyelid the negative shape is a triangular shape, and we can see the angle of it as well quite clearly, and we can see how big that has to be. And when we come to shading, what we want to do is to create this graduated feel. So I start with the inside of the shape and shade to the outside edge, and just check, for instance, this iris. We can check the crescent shape of the sclera, the white of the eye, to check that that's the same. So we've got positive and negative shapes within inside the eye as well. Here just making the top eyelid shadow line, checking that where the position of that is within the square. Now when we come on to doing a painting of this, what we'll be doing is saying, well, the highlights are generally upwardly facing forms, and the shadows are generally downward facing forms because the light is coming from the top and to the left in this case. So we're just gently shading those areas in and graduating it towards the greyness of the skin tone, which isn't going to be left white, although in this drawing, because it's for a painting, I'm going to leave it white because the painting will eventually take over. We have just the sides of the cheek to put in, and you can see how that turns under, and there's a little muscle at the side of one square. We can use that as a starting point for the shading of that particular part of the cheek, which I'm going to show you in a second. There we are, and you can see that muscle coming down, part of the jawline as well. All these areas are different sorts of shadows and tones that I'll talk about as we go through to the next video. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Please like and subscribe the video, and we'll see you next time. If you do get a chance, have a look at my website and you can see the sort of work that I do, as well as the tutorials. So take care and stay safe.